Hello, I am Kirsten Upmeyer, graphic design instructor and yearbook advisor at Academy at the Lakes in Land O'Lakes, Florida. Welcome to my Adobe InDesign tutorial series. These are done for my graphics and yearbook classes and do cover some yearbook specific design.
Okay, so what I'd like to do for this first tutorial is basically just give you an overview of Adobe InDesign's interface and the menus. One of the things to understand about the interface is that it is highly customizable. So if we come up to the top right corner here, we'll see that there's a drop-down menu and you can basically choose from a variety of preset workspaces where Adobe has sort of chosen and arranged the palettes that it most feels you would need depending on the type of job that you would be doing. Now, one thing that's pretty cool about this also is that if over time you find, whether it's with different types of jobs or a certain way you always like all of your stuff set up, that if you have certain panels and you've got them set up in certain ways, if you've got certain customized aspects to your menu, and you really like the way that's set up, one of the things you can do is come up here and you can go down to new workspace. So let's say I have this particular setup I use all the time when I'm working with the yearbook. I could name that literally yearbook. And, we want to keep the panel locations and the customization of the menus. If I hit OK, this is now a saved preset that I can always toggle back to anytime I want. Now I'm going to set it back to essentials and reset essentials just so we're kind of dealing with sort of an interface for most of these tutorials where everybody's kind of looking at the same thing. I am, however, going to go ahead and minimize these panels over to the right a little bit just so we have a little bit more real estate to see the document as large as possible. In fact, a neat little tip is that if you hit your tab key, it'll actually hide your toolbar over on the left and your panels on the right and give you sort of the largest amount of space possible to have the document at as full size as possible. Now, you have to be really good with all of your command keys or control keys if you're on a PC to be able to access tools and certain settings without needing the toolbar or the panels open. Speaking of, here's the toolbar. This is over on our left, and it can be adjusted. We can double it up like that. It is, like the panels on the right, a free-floating palette, so we can move it out into different places. We can set it in different types of positions. We can move it to places where we feel like it's going to be most accessible to us. And that's the thing to remember about these panels and the toolbar and all of this stuff that's so great is, again, these things are very arrangeable. So you can dock them in all sorts of different places. You can minimize them and maximize them, stack them in various ways. And depending, you can kind of see how that blue highlight pops up. So depending sort of on where the blue highlight is, you're docking them in all sorts of different configurations. So again, very, very customizable. But I'm going to, again, just take us back to reset essentials. So we're kind of back where we started from. And again, I'll minimize these just so we can kind of see just the names and the icons so that we've got as much space as possible here. Now, I am going to show you, and this was actually in Essentials Classic, which they still have up as a preset. There is one panel that does eat up a fair amount of real estate, but that I really, really like, and that is the control panel. Now, all of your panels live under the window menu. And when I open this, you're going to see that it opens up above the document. And if you've used Microsoft products like PowerPoint and Word and such, this is going to look a little familiar to you, having a bunch of your tools kind of right there up above your document. Now, I love the control panel because it's a dynamic panel and it changes depending on what kind of tools I'm using or what kind of objects I'm in. So like if I'm in a text box with my type tool, now I've got all of my character and paragraph settings, so having different types of things open or in different tools Adobe's going to put up in the control panel the settings and the options that it most thinks you might be needing based on the object you have selected and the tool that you're in. So to me, a lot of times that's a lot faster than coming all the way over here to open up a panel over here, or going up into a menu to open something up to access it. Now, of course, again, the fastest way to do stuff is to learn the command, or again, if you're on a PC, the control keys. And the more you learn of those, the faster you can get. So you can like literally type in a letter like the letter I, and it immediately drops you to your eyedropper tool, for instance. Or of course, commands like Command C to copy, Command V to paste, that sort of thing. So that's pretty much the interface. Let's talk a little. Oh, well, let's look at this. So the documents themselves live right here in tabs, and the more documents you have open, they're just going to continue to stack down in tab form. So this is very much like if you're in a web browser and you have multiple tabs open. So you can actually pop back and forth between individual documents very quickly if you have them open. So let's go over the menus. The biggest thing I want to talk about with the menus is that it's not so much that you have to memorize everything that's under every menu, as if you understand what each of the menus is for, it helps you pick the right menu to find what you're looking for. So let's talk about them briefly. The InDesign menu, of course, is about the program. So hiding it, showing it, quitting it. Also important is this is where our preferences are located, and we'll be talking about some of those in more detail in a future tutorial. The file menu is all about the document itself, so opening it, saving it, closing it, printing it, that sort of thing. Edit is, of course, where our cut, copy, and paste live. Spelling is under edit, find and change, and some other useful editing tools. Layout is about exactly that. This is where you can adjust your margins, your columns, you can insert, move pages, duplicate pages, basically just all the stuff you would do to the actual document in terms of the layout, structure, and number of pages of it. Type is where all your typography is going to live, but you really are better off, in my opinion, just accessing pretty much most of those tools, although not all of them, but most of them, directly from the control bar. Also kind of the same thing with the object menu, and a lot of some of the settings in here are actually also available as free floating palettes. So docking the palettes might be a better option as well than going down to the menu, because it's kind of adding another step. InDesign does have tables, and you can put tables in InDesign not only to place like spreadsheet type information, like maybe you're laying out an annual report, but also as a highly structured layout tool. So that's definitely something that eventually I'll do a future tutorial on. View is, of course, about what you see on your monitor, on your screen. There are two things I wanted to touch on here. The first is the display performance. I personally prefer high quality display. Vector items from Illustrator render out cleanly. Everything is nice, looks really good. But if you have an older computer, if your memory isn't quite what it should be to be running all the Adobe products, if you find you're having a lot of like lag in your screen redraw and things like that, moving to typical display might be a better option. Worst case scenario, fast display. I really try and avoid that. It doesn't render pictures out, and everything looks pretty crummy in that. But typical display is something you could step down to if you needed, if you felt like you were having problems with like memory while you were in InDesign. Now, the other thing is the screen mode. Every once in a while, I think it's a really good idea to go and click on preview and just take a look-see at your document, without all of the frames around the objects. You can see them kind of as I roll over them popping back up, but when I roll off, they're gone. All my margins are gone. Any columns, guides, grids, those are all going to disappear. Now, yes, we do see this blue bleed bar here, but that's because this is specifically a special Walsworth yearbook spread document. On a normal InDesign document, you would not see this either, and any indications of your bleed lines and all of that stuff would all vanish as well. And what you'd basically be seeing is the document as close to what it would look like if it prints as possible. And one of the things you have to realize and remember is that all of those frames and those guides and those grids and all of that stuff takes up visual real estate in your layout. And sometimes you don't realize it, and you may think your layout looks busier than it actually is. So popping into view and going into screen mode and choosing preview once in a while is a good idea, because it helps you really take a little bit of a preview of what it's going to look like when it prints. Window, as I mentioned before, is of course where all of your panels live. So if you ever need to access one and it's not up there on your interface in your workspace, you're going to be able to turn it on from here. This is a menu that most of you will not normally see. This is specifically something that is a yearbook plugin set, a suite of tools and panels that are specifically provided by our yearbook publisher, Walsworth. So these particular panels and this particular menu, if you are not one of my students or if you're one of my graphic design students, you would not normally see this. Just like you wouldn't see these blue bars, because these are a couple things that are specific to yearbook layout, and that is something that some of these tutorials will be pretty specifically covering. But I will, of course, be also covering a lot of generalized layout as well. And then the last is the help menu. And Adobe actually has great help. They've got a bunch of wonderful tutorials. In fact, if you go into the Creative Cloud Manager app and go to Learn, you'll see that there are a whole bunch of tutorials. They're searchable by program, or you can search specific terms. And they've got a lot of great short video tutorials, great way to enhance or expand your skill set with Adobe, or find an answer to a question that you have. All right, so that's pretty much it. I hope this was helpful. Certainly, if you have any questions and you're one of my students, you can catch me at school or email me at my school email. If you are not a student of mine and you have questions, or if you are interested in further tutorials and training from me, please feel free to reach out to me at kirstenu@icloud.com. Okay, thank you so much.